I'm one of those people, I seem to be kind of just wired towards atheism. The idea in believing in the unobservable was just something that I couldn't even comprehend. The atheist materialist view of love, at least my atheist materialist view of love, was unbelievably depressing. It was, and even at the time, I admitted this. I actually had a real crisis of, I guess it was just a good old-fashioned existential crisis. I had had a moment that made me reject atheism and made me believe that there was something else out there, that love that I had experienced with my newborn child had a source. And so I set out to look for that source. I turned to spirituality, and I had a stack of books about Buddhism and all these different religions. You have to admit that something crazy happened in first century Palestine. I love the readers of my blog, especially my personal blog. I've been keeping it for a long time. I was getting so many emails from blog readers saying that they had spent days reading the entire archives of my blog. Ted Weinstein is my literary agent, and he was the one who said, let's turn this into a memoir. That was back in 2008, and he's been with me the whole way, and I have learned so much from him. My writing is totally different. I can't imagine what God's will is for this book. I just want people to say, that was a good read. My name is Jennifer Fulwiler. I'm a writer, and I'm an atheist to Catholic convert. What's in the mystery can? So this is a nice pony. We're supposed to write 5 clues so that your class can guess what's in here. What are some of the clues? The experience of having kids is, has been mind-blowing for me. Growing up as an only child for a long time, I didn't even think I wanted to have kids, and each one of them is just, a mystery to me. They're just so interesting and hilarious. And what are some good clues that we could write?
I defeated the dragon with all my love.
I defeated the dragon with all my love. Oh, people are definitely going to know that's a pony when you say that. Do the other children, does it seem like their mommies write the mystery can questions, or does it seem like the children do?
No, mommies.
I defeated the dragon with all my love. How about something like, I have 4 legs? Maybe, yeah, just kind of something basic. All right, give me 5. We did the mystery can questions. People talk about the challenges of having 5 little kids, but it's nothing compared to just the joy of being surrounded by these awesome, interesting, crazy little people. I mean, it's never a dull moment. I'm going to make sure that the big kids are actually getting up. Right. Is Kate waking up too?
Yeah.
Is she? No, she's not waking up. You wanna wake up? Lonely. Hey girls, how about quesadillas in your lunch? We have lots of food allergies in your classes, so we have to make sure that we don't do PBJs or anything that the peanut allergy people are allergic to. Quesadilla, okay.
Mommy.
Uh-huh.
The one that has peanut allergies can't make it.
Oh, well, I don't think we know that, Lucy, so we'll just have to go ahead and not put peanut butter in your lunch. Growing up, I had a really great family life. I was an only child, and we actually moved around a lot. I moved, I think, 15 times before I was 15 For me, that worked for me. I was always kind of more of an introverted person, and that's actually where I developed my love of writing, is when we'd be in a new city and it took me a while to make friends, I would just spend hours and hours just doing my writing. My dad is a super interesting guy. He was actually in Special Forces, a Green Beret back in the 60s when they did some really crazy stuff. And he went on to be an engineer. And religiously, he is not a believer, and that's something that we kind of shared growing up. But he didn't raise me as much, to be an atheist per se, as he did just teach me to seek truth and question assumptions. And he probably thinks it's ironic that it was those lessons that he taught me that actually led me to Catholicism. In my family, we always loved books. There were just books everywhere, and especially any kind of books that had to do with science or learning about the universe. We had the series where there was a different book on every planet, and the series about all the different types of geology in the earth, and I used to love to look through those.
We had Time Life books, a whole series on different science subjects, and astronomy was always something that she was very interested in and still is today.
Starting when I was, I think, still in elementary school, my dad would come in each night and we'd maybe read a little Nancy Drew, but then we'd also read Carl Sagan's Cosmos. And we would talk about, just how great science was, that we could learn so many things about the universe, and there really was a sense of wonder there. And so for me, it was a lot of those nonfiction kind of science-y books that really inspired a sense of wonder in me, and then at the same time entrenched me in my atheism, since many of those kinds of books were written by atheists. I think the first book that really made me realize that I might want to be a writer one day was actually C.S. Lewis's Narnia series. I'd heard this weird, terrible rumor that he was a Christian, and so I'd kind of tried not to get into his books because obviously I couldn't be reading Christian books, but I was so enchanted with that sense of wonder in his series. It made me think, I might want to do that one day too. The reason that Christianity seemed so nonsensical to me was that I was very much an atheist materialist, meaning I believed what we could observe and what we could touch and feel and smell, and so I needed to see concrete evidence, the kind that you could demonstrate in a laboratory, before I would believe something. My atheism definitely impacted my entire worldview, my outlook on everything. I actually had a real crisis where I would think of, this was back in college, I would think of the love I had for my parents or my friends, or just all the love that I had experienced in my life, and I realized it's all just confined to the chemical reactions in our brains. Like, if a meteor hits the world tomorrow and we all cease to exist, then all that love just goes away. It disappears. To realize that everything, all my experiences, all the life and all the love that I had lived was just this mirage based on chemical reactions in my brain. Frankly, it was hard to get out of bed in the morning, and it's the kind of thought that made you think about suicide. The first thing that really made me question my atheist materialist worldview was actually love, because I had always said that I don't believe in anything that I can't measure or observe or experience in a direct way. And when I fell in love with Joe, and especially when we had our first child, that was an experience of love that I had never had before. And suddenly I realized that I believed that this love between us was some real thing. Obviously it was working through the chemical reactions in our brains, but it had a source outside of it. I believed that it was this real extant thing, and yet you couldn't prove it in a laboratory. You couldn't measure it or observe it. And so that's the first time I really rejected true atheist materialism, when I realized that I actually did believe in love. So by the time I met my husband, I didn't know that he actually was a believer and even kind of in some way considered himself a sort of non-practicing Christian. And I found that out after we were already dating, and I was really shocked by that because I had worked very hard to distance myself from Christians. He'd made a couple of passing comments, and I guess I was hoping he meant it in a cultural sense. I didn't think there was any way that he could really mean that, because to me, that belief system was so nonsensical and so not evidence-based that I didn't believe that he could really believe it. What I told myself is that it must have been some kind of holdover from his childhood that he'd never really had a chance to question, because he grew up poor and ended up with degrees from Yale, Columbia, and Stanford. So I knew he was smart. There was no question about that. But I had it firmly in my mind that smart people were never believers, and especially never Christians. I think my reaction to finding out that Joe was a Christian was just denial. I didn't believe it. There was one moment where I told Joe, you know, I hope you know I'm an atheist. This was shortly after I realized that he really did consider himself a Christian, even though he didn't practice his faith. He didn't go to church, he didn't read the Bible, but he had some kind of faith in Jesus that I obviously wasn't going to be able to talk him out of. And so I said, you know, I hope you know that I'm an atheist. And his reaction was to laugh. And he said that he didn't believe it. And I said, why don't you believe that I'm an atheist? And he said, because it's so unreasonable. And he said, if you ever spend some time thinking about it, you're not going to be an atheist anymore.
So I was an only child, and I was raised by a single mother. It was pretty lonely at times. You know, I was a latchkey kid, we both were. Would come home, let myself into the house, and then just sit there and watch Three's Company. I had a dachshund dog that was with me all the time.
Why didn't you watch Small Wonders?
Small Wonders was terrible, and that was later.
She was like a robot?
Yeah.
Like, hello. How have you adjusted to having so many little kids?
Yeah,
I think for me,
it's
sometimes
it's
surreal.
wildly different now. Are you enjoying this, Jen? Were you trying to sleep? Sorry. But to me, it's all fun, you know. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, I love having a lot of kids, and I love having just a lot of people around, and I just find it to be fantastic.
Hey Joe, a blog reader emailed me today to say that it goes by so fast, these years with young children. Is it just going by so fast for you?
Flying by. There's always something to do too, you know. I mean, I coached soccer practice last night, and then on Saturdays, Jennifer's mom takes the older kids and hits tennis balls with them just for fun.
Okay, everyone say do sign of the cross, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Okay, it's that one.
I find that our house has become such a hive of activity that it's like it really attracts people, you know.
In the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace.
Amen. Let's say a quick glory be. Glory be to the Father and to the Son. And
Wait,
to the Holy
actually, let's say this one. Glory
Okay.
to the Father, and to the Son, to the
Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, and will be forever. Amen. All right, cross yourselves, everyone. I turned to spirituality, and you know, I had a stack of books about Buddhism and you know, all these different religions. And Joe was just kind of walking by, busy with work, but made the passing comment, you know, you might want to start with the only religion whose founder claimed to be God, because that's kind of a bold claim, kind of hard to pull off when someone does the very ungodlike move of dying and staying dead. And so I thought, that is an interesting point, because there have been plenty of people throughout the ages who claim to be God, and look how far it got them. You know, when they died, everyone's like, okay, so not God. We decided to just join some sort of church community. Neither one of us were very religious at the time, but we had decided that that would be good. And so in typical MBA fashion, I think Joe actually had a spreadsheet. He had a spreadsheet, systematically went to each church.
It was an interesting process. When Jen first said that they were looking for a church, and this was not long after Donald was born, I thought it was like most people do, they should take their kids to church, so they would find a church and take Donald once or twice a month, that type of thing. But I should have known better knowing Jen.
How active was the church, I think was one of them. Another one was like, how would we fit in? Which it's funny to me, looking back, it's like, I was playing God, right? I was trying to find a church that would fit my social needs instead of saying, all right, does God have a church that he'd like me to join?
When I was an atheist, one of the things that always seemed ridiculous to me was that there were so many religions in the world and so many of them claimed that they were the one. And I kind of thought, don't you guys look around, see that everyone else is saying the same thing?
I kept trying to drag Jennifer with me. And this was a phase when she was still she was kind of less militant atheist. She was kind of starting to be more open to the idea, but she really was not going to get out of bed.
I didn't care about the spreadsheet.
Well, you weren't going to go to church. I mean, you just weren't going to go.
So that was yet one of the many things that made me think that religion is obviously just something, we have a natural tendency to want to believe that, there are things going on around us that we can't see, but that we needed to realize, the unreasonableness of it.
So finally, I narrow it down to this list of like 2. And of course, it ends up being like the richest church in Austin and like the prettiest church in Austin, just like architecturally. So I mean, it kind of tells you like, how, what I was like back then. But so I finally dragged Jennifer to these, and we leave after the second one, and I'm like, so, what do you think? I've done all this research, and these are the top 2. And she was just like, no. I mean, the one is like, it's all people with blue hair, and like, it's like, it reminds me of the church lady skit from Saturday Night Live. And the other one is like so snooty, like I'm afraid I'm gonna back into someone's Jaguar and have to get sued. Like,
well, we drove a Jaguar, so.
Well, I know, but yeah.
That'd really be nice.
2
Jaguars.
Right. Countersue, I guess. Through a long series of circumstances, we finally started looking at Catholic churches, because initially I wouldn't even consider Catholic churches, because I just thought Catholic Church is completely wrong-headed.
She started researching it, going to different churches, arguing with people online about it, reading everything she could find, and I realized then that this was not a trivial thing. She was taking this very seriously.
You've got this guy who came from a lower middle class region, gathered a bunch of middle class followers, was crucified along with thousands of other Jewish men that year, and yet suddenly you see thousands upon thousands of Jews abandoning these social and religious structures that they had carefully, held dear for thousands and thousands of years, like animal sacrifice and, so many of their customs, they were abandoning, and all of them saying that it was because they had seen this man risen from the dead. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I could believe that. That was a lot to bite off for someone who had been a lifelong atheist.
But we finally went to a Catholic church, and as soon as we walked in, there were all these babies, and all these young people. I mean, by young, I mean there were 10-year-olds, there were 15-year-olds, there were 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds. All the other churches that I had visited in Austin, and which was pretty much all of them, at least the larger Protestant churches, it was a very gray-haired group. Nothing wrong with having gray hair, but like, where are all the other people?
As I began to read and to research, I saw the Catholic Church, and I realized this is one of the most hated organizations in the world, and frankly always has been, and yet it won't go away. Like, empire after empire has fallen away around it. It is the longest continually operated human institution in the world. It says things that enrage emperors and dictators, and yet it's still here. I once read an atheist to Catholic conversion where the guy was talking about this moment when he first became involved in Catholic circles, and his quote was, that I love, he said, "Suddenly I was surrounded by life." And I think that that's the big thing, like, since we've become Catholic, it's just been an explosion of life everywhere. Scorpions, they are, sometimes I don't know how I live in this place. Our house is full of them. They're everywhere. We see them, at least a couple times a month.
So Lane, what did you do today?
Today, we had a tea party and put series on our cups and made popsicles. Oh, and we found a big scorpion!
Really? And what did you do with the scorpion?
We lost it
You lost it. Where did you lose it?
in the kitchen.
There's a huge scorpion on my kitchen floor. I need to work on my scorpion reaction for sure. No, don't go in there. No. It is far, far better to throw a book on them, but I can't throw a book on them when they are up on some baseboard. So it is clear to me that these things are just messing with me. I'm getting the spray. I'm gonna spray it. Yes, that is what I am going to do. When you live in Texas, you have a wide variety of horrible insect-killing devices, and so it's kind of like having a bar. You know, which one am I going to choose? Ah! It's not doing anything. That's worse than if it was doing something. Ugh, how do I sleep with this knowledge? What? Do something. My dinner is ready. It's a weird robot noise. I'm like, you know, it's weirder than you'd think. It's not like the high-pitched shriek. It's like, Like, I wish I could have a better shriek, more like, oh my, like something ladylike, but instead, like, I don't know, I sound like weird Frankenstein. And now, thanks to my scorpion-killing attempts, I have burned dinner and the smoke detector is going off. Welcome to my life. There is only one reason that people settled in this hot, crazy, scorpion and rattlesnake-filled land, and it's because we all wanted freedom. And that very much carries through into the culture of Texas today. Austin is still very Texas, but it's weird Texas. Other cities in Texas like Austin, but Austin is kind of like the crazy hippie dreadlocked cousin compared to like Dallas or Houston. Thanks so much for meeting me. I really appreciate it. So how's your semester going so far?
Going pretty good.
Professor Coons is a philosophy professor at the University of Texas.
I do find that among undergraduate philosophy majors, people in the Undergraduate Philosophy Association, they're often people that have drifted away from their faith, from the childhood faith, and they use philosophy as a kind of substitute, because it does have some similarities.
Right. It feeds that hunger for the transcendent.
Right, exactly.
I was pretty settled that objective truth cannot be known, so I thought, what is the purpose of philosophy? If it's all just kind of opinions about things that none of us can ever know, I personally didn't see the purpose of it, and I feel like you see that in our culture, that people have lost an understanding of why philosophy matters. Professor Coons has this great apologetic series that's become pretty well known here in Austin, where he goes to various parishes or UT campus, and he offers a series of classes that just kind of give people an informal knowledge of the faith from all different aspects. Like why is faith perfectly compatible with reason?
Faith and reason support each other.
Right.
But in the short run, or at least in individual people's lives, sometimes they can be substitutes, sort of competitors.
We both set out to just look for truth. Joe as a non-practicing kind of lukewarm Christian, and me coming from a background of atheism, and we said, we don't care where it leads us, but we had come to believe that objective truth can be known, and we wanted to find it. And what we found in Christianity, specifically Catholicism, was we were both kind of stunned when we realized this is the most reasonable belief system in the world, that it's more reasonable than atheism and than anything else we'd encountered. And we were both kind of shocked because we had all those old stereotypes. We were like, Catholicism? Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah, no, exactly.
In the past, he's asked me to be a guest speaker at some of these events, and that's how I first got to know him. There were people who weren't fully bought in to what the church teaches, because I actually got confronted afterwards.
You go into apologetics, this kind of gets into a bigger question, thinking that it's sort of like Greco-Roman wrestling, you know? In other words, you just got to get the other guy to say uncle. It can be very frustrating because they never have to say uncle. They can always find a way out of any given move. So the answer really has to be, look, I can offer you what are sort of divine invitations to believe.
Right.
Here's some things that if you're really open to it and you think about, they can lead to a perfectly reasonable belief. But you know, if you're not open to it, then probably better things to do.
I think I can explain pretty well the reasons that I found compelling that converted. I mean, that in fact, it's something that I think frustrates my literary agent, that I don't have an emotional conversion. So writing about it is kind of like, I read these books and I found the following bullet points compelling. I mean, I could have written my entire memoir in bullet points.
If you're just putting up something on the internet, right, and bam, you know, all kinds of people are going to respond in a really hostile way. But if you're in a conversation, or even if you're giving a talk to people, I find that there isn't that much personal hostility directed to me, typically.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Undersell what you're doing, but provide lots and lots of evidence, right?
Okay.
And there's always a temptation to do the other way around, right? To sort of say, look, I'm now going to prove God's existence beyond all reasonable doubt, right?
Now.
Or here's the evidence of resurrection. Look, if this doesn't convince you, you're just an idiot, right? And that will cause hostility, right? Because people feel threatened now.
Right.
You know, you're coming at them with this kind of apologetics machine that's going to run them over, right?
Well, and that's the attitude you were talking about winning. It's about me personally beating you.
Right, yeah,
which is,
exactly.
that's not going to get you anywhere.
Exactly right.
Well, I'm looking forward to the talk. I hope it goes well. I hope I'm able to hang in the college environment.
Yeah.
I get so many emails from either atheists or people who know atheists who have, you know, all these questions that are, it's kind of a whole huge ball of wax to try to address. And I think the most common one that I get, though, is the question from people who are non-believers. They say, what do you do about the fact that there is no evidence in the same way that there would be scientific evidence? Like, we believe that this table is here because we can observe it, we can see it. And I think that some people who were raised in very rationalist or maybe just materialist environments, they really rely on their five senses, on what we can observe and touch and smell and know. What do you say to that question of where's the evidence?
And so I believe there is plenty of evidence, right? I mean, Paul talks about this in Romans 1, that God's divine nature is manifest or evident, right, in what he's made, in the creation. So the whole creation, in a certain sense, is evidence.
Right.
Each one of us is evidence, right?
Yeah.
You can't expect it to be testable in the same way, repeatable, right? You know, it's like, okay, God, you did this creation, now do another one for us, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
He's not
right?
a wish-granting genie.
Right, exactly. So now, in dealing with God, we're talking about somebody who is, you know, infinitely smarter than us, far more powerful than us, right? And so to imagine that the same kind of techniques are going to work, right? And that he's going to be observable. I mean, what exactly would that mean? Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish thinker, one time says, you know what, you could expect to see some really big bird with bright feathers, and there's God. I mean, that wouldn't help, right? That wouldn't give you God. So what one has to do then is one has to realize, okay, so the scientific methods, right, that we develop these other fields are just not going to be the appropriate thing to apply to knowing God. I mean, I can give you an argument that tries to show that there has to be a first cause, and it's uncaused, and it has to be infinite. And you can just say, okay, well, I don't believe there's any cause at all. Knowing God has all kinds of moral and existential implications, right? So God doesn't want to just satisfy our idle curiosity that he's there. He wants a relationship with us that transforms us.
Right.
And if you're not willing to have that kind of relationship, he's not going to intrude on you. He's amazingly respectful of our free will. Right? That's the kind of the astonishing thing, given how powerful he is.
I always love every now and then just getting that. It's like an intellectual refill, you know, to hang out with someone who is like, you know, 10 times smarter than I am, and just get their takes on things.
Thanks for agreeing to help.
Yeah, well, and thank you so much for meeting me. I really appreciate your advice about reaching out. I mean, you're someone I've always admired by your ability to have these dialogues with people from all different perspectives and just be calm and have great, interesting discussions. And so I really appreciate that advice too. It was really just a nice, you know, coffee and philosophizing session. So I really feel kind of energized and, you know, all the more equipped to go out and defend the faith. today. Donald, I'll spell the word dollar for you, since you'll need to know that for what you're writing. So I just wanted to confirm, you're good for picking up the girls, right? Be good for Grammy, okay? Remember, she's working, so be nice and quiet. Donald, say goodbye. Bye. Love you. Okay, now we're gonna hoof it on over to Yaya's to drop the baby off. My mother-in-law is, she's someone that people don't soon forget after they meet her. She grew up very, very poor in East Texas and has just fought tooth and nail for everything she has in life. And so she is just a very typical tough Texas woman. And she's one of those people who is always entertaining, and you just kind of never know what she's gonna say next, truly.
I've been thinking about calling protective services so that they'll forbid the kids from coming over here. Then that way,
You'll call CPS on yourself?
yeah, CPS will say, okay, you can't keep these kids anymore.
I won't be allowed to drop them off, the cops will come.
That's right.
So do I ever receive hate mail from atheists? I think that sometimes Christians think of atheists as like other or totally different or even enemies. So this is my YouTube video. I've never done anything that attacks atheists. The videos I've made are just for Catholics, kind of supporting them and sharing the faith and, you know, giving advice. Evidently, caps lock is a big thing in the online atheist community. You're a terrible excuse for a human being. More, I'm a disgusting human being. I'm weak. That's another one we have here. It's a effing fantasy, wake the F up. Why are you so angry? I get emails and comments like that all the time. When I was a child, I lived in the Bible Belt for quite a while, and unfortunately, I was exposed to some of maybe the not nice sides of Christianity. I would have people who, you know, claim to follow Jesus to really ostracize me and often say pretty hostile things to me. My experience has been when people come to faith, it is very often through a relationship, through having some sort of personal connection with someone who is a believer. And so I think it's actually kind of dangerous for us to begin to build those walls and see non-believers as people that we're against and we're combating. That's not really the way I think of it. That's certainly not the relationship between me and my dad or any of the other atheists I know. You know, I see them as, you know, friends and family members just like anyone else. You know, I get tons of emails, I hear tons of stories, and what I've noticed is a theme with all these conversions is it always starts with a willingness to be transformed. Yeah. And once you reach that state, it's usually a pretty sure shot to conversion, but if you don't have that openness to be transformed, then you can look at all the evidence, you can look at all the arguments, and you won't get anywhere. So I just got the latest round of feedback from one of the readers who is reading my book to give me some tips on how to improve it. I guess I might have hoped that they would say, oh, it's great, there's no improvements can be made. I'm the type of writer that I would be comfortable writing in bullet points. I mean, I feel burdened when I have to like mention that it was raining outside, you know, to describe a scene. I live my life in my head. I don't want to describe anything. I was only doing it in my book because people told me I had to, and I'd be like, I don't know, the flan, it was glistening. Like, what do you want from my life? It looks like this email here is about 3,000 words. Unfortunately, I think he's right. I think he's pointed out some real flaws, and I think it's gonna push back the finish date of this version weeks. But you know, it's important with these things. We have to trust in God's time and turn it over to the Holy Spirit, and just pray that, you know, the book will be done, you know, when it's God's will for it to be done. So it's important to remember that. One of the things I really want to do with this book is, I remember when I had first converted, I was looking for some books that would kind of speak to me as someone with a background of complete non-belief who was just now becoming Catholic. And so much of it was so heavily Catholic that it just didn't speak to me where I was. And I had this very fleeting thought, but one that has stayed with me, where I thought, if I were to ever write my story, as silly as that sounds, I would want it to speak to a wide audience. I would want it to be interesting, not just to people who were faithful Catholics, but just to anyone. Hey, you got rained on.
Yeah, I thought you were going to the observatory.
What time is it? I'm going to an observatory with my dad to just, I think it's going to rain, but we were hoping to just look at some stars. And my dad actually has an astronomer friend who has a star named after him. And this guy passed away a couple years ago, and my dad still really feels that loss and really mourns for him. And so I thought it might be kind of cathartic to go to a real observatory and look for that star. And I think we'll just be sitting in the rain and just checking out the telescope instead. My dad and I have really been looking forward to this night for a long time, to just, get to see this amazing telescope and look at the stars. And it's raining. It hasn't rained in the city for at least 3 or 4 weeks. I don't think we've even had cloud cover for the past 2 weeks. This is a fun night out for me and my dad. It's nice for me to get out of the house every now and then, get a break from the chaos, maybe do something kind of intellectual to just get a big, huge change of pace from daily life.
Well, sharing astronomy with Jenny started at a very early age because she was interested in it, and it was a combination of our telescope in the backyard where we could set it up and look at things. Anytime something worthwhile came on TV, we would watch it. We share things back and forth on email, things we found on the internet that have to do with astronomy, and I'm glad she stayed with it because it's really a fascinating subject.
One of the things I'd wanted to see tonight, if it weren't raining, would we have been able to see your friend Richard Norton's star?
Probably not, because he has an asteroid named
Oh,
after him,
so
not a
I guess,
star.
yeah, not the
No.
star. I've been telling everyone he had a star. That
No,
sounds,
it was an asteroid.
That's the same thing,
after
right?
he died, yeah. Close. He was a professor, astronomy professor for several years, designed and built several of the major planetariums. He was also very much into fossil collecting. At one time he had the largest private collection of fossils. And we became good friends, and stayed friends until he died a couple of years ago. When he was doing his photography business, that's back when we had an airplane, and he and I flew up to the volcano fields up in northern Arizona and took pictures for his collection up there, and spent the day doing that, and then came back, and while he was developing the film, I cooked some steaks, and we got a bottle of wine and sat out on his back patio in Tucson and watched the sunset and talked about the mysteries of the universe.
And that was your plane, right? That
Yes.
that you flew him around in.
Yeah.
And that was whoa, wasp! Ah, sorry. You're not. Whoa! Okay. He's a real Texan. I'm a fraud. Sometimes I don't know how I live in this place. I mean, I have to think that when my ancestors came here in like 1840, they were from Illinois and Kentucky, and like they'd seen the flyers of like the new land of Tejas, come down here, and it's on you. It was on you, so.
You got anything we can swat it with?
Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh gosh. I have to think they got down here and were like, what is this? Like they're rattlesnakes and like scorpions, and like we all have heat stroke, and it's like 105 degrees. Oh my gosh, now we have a mad wounded wasp. Ah! Hang on. Oh, there it is. In those times when you would, like go out in the Arizona sky and, see the heavens, like what do you see? What was there for you?
It's amazing things. There is so much there that it boggles the mind. I mean, you can start with the planets, which are the nearest things. You can see the major stars.
You were talking about how you love Norton because you could ask him all these tough questions, and and he'd come right back at you with good answers. It reminds me of when you were talking about when you were in school, like in high school, and you would take religion courses and you would ask them tough questions and you didn't get good answers, right?
No.
Or any answers.
No, and that's, I think, when I had to take courses in school, I went to a high school that was a church-supported military school, and you had to take courses for credit in religion, and New Testament religion mostly. And the more I got into it, the less sense it made. Again, I think I was born with a logical mind, and I needed the proof.
Some people would say, like, the fact that there's something instead of nothing, that's like the universe is a massive piece of evidence, but you don't see evidence for, like, God himself.
No.
Like he's not making himself physically appearing right now.
Right,
So,
and that's the type of thing that I would need.
Yeah.
But with Norton, one of the last arguments I had with him before he died was that I think either Hubble or Einstein was wrong.
It's a bold claim.
Yeah, from a
Take
backyard
them on.
from a backyard astronomer. But there was something in Hubble's observations of the moving bodies in the universe that seemed to contradict what Einstein said about the velocity of light. And it didn't make sense to me. And astronomy as a whole is an amazing thing because you can see it. We're studying back toward the Big Bang. We're within microseconds of when it happens. And will we ever know the big question of what happened before the Big Bang? Probably not in my lifetime, but maybe you'll.
What do you think was there before the Big Bang?
That's above my IQ level to speculate on that. It's not like this explosion occurred in space. There was no space. There was no space, there was no time, there was nothing there. And that's why you see these things on TV, these programs that shows the Big Bang exploding.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't have seen that because there was no
Because there was nothing.
There was no place to stand off and watch it.
That messes with your mind that
It
like
does.
nothing existed. And when you think of nothing, you think of blank space. But no, there wasn't
no space.
blank space.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
That's what, a lot of people have said that's where the philosophers come in. That's where science leaves off and philosophy comes in.
But if you look at it, there's a lot of Genesis that follows astronomy.
Let there be light.
Let there be
it was
light.
photons.
Yeah, there was could have been the Big Bang. The Earth formed out of nothing. Well, that was the accretion from the dust clouds.
Right.
And stuff. So there's a lot of similarity, and I often wonder, how did they know that? Where did they get this idea from?
I know.
So they didn't have good telescopes back then.
Right. Right, and they couldn't measure the radio waves
Yeah.
that were at the same frequency. And I know, yeah. When I read Genesis for the first time, as an adult, that I'd really thought about it. I read that too, and for whatever reason, I had actually just read that that they think it was mostly photons that were there in early in the Big Bang. And then I opened Genesis, and God says there was nothing. And then God says, "Let there be light." So do you think there's life on other planets?
Well, I think there's probably life of some form somewhere, just because there are billions of galaxies. Each galaxy has billions of stars. We're finding planets by the hundreds recently. I think just the odds are that since everything in the universe has the same chemistry that we have in our solar system on the Earth, somewhere out there's a planet that's in the right place, away from its star, so it's not too hot, not too cold, and there probably is some. Other galaxies, who knows if there's somebody out there sending a signal that's strong enough. But I think we should keep listening. We have several places. The Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico listens for stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it has to be frustrating for the people that really believe in it, and they're listening, and everybody's laughing at them, and nobody wants to fund them, and everything. But yeah, sooner or later, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Well, thanks so much for meeting me out here.
Yes, it was fun.
And yeah, we'll try it again soon.
No, it's been a great night. This has been very interesting. I wish the clouds had held off a little longer and we could have seen some things, but still, I'm impressed just looking at this telescope. She settled on the Catholic religion, which I'd had some issues with in the past, but I could tell that she was into it very sincerely. She had made her commitment, and I was very proud of her. It wasn't one of those things. She's not being a just in case Christian. People that go to church at Easter and Christmas, they feel like they should go to church just in case there's a God, and they have to own up to it when they die. That's not the way she looked at it, and she's into it 100%, and I'm very proud of her because of that.
I remember the first time it clicked for me, I was actually at my hematologist's office getting what seemed like the millionth blood test, and I had a terrible fear of needles, and so I got out my rosary and was looking at it, and I was looking at the crucifix on it and just trying to figure out, I still didn't exactly get this whole suffering thing. And suddenly it clicked for me, and I realized that's God, the one who made the galaxies, the one who made our entire earth, the creator of everything. He suffered terribly. And the moment that clicked, that I really got it, that God, the source of all that is good, the source of all life, that he came down here and that he suffered with us. Suddenly I could let go of that confining worldview where suffering was the worst evil and that you had to spend your entire life running away from it. And suddenly I could accept it. And it didn't mean that I liked suffering, nobody likes suffering, but suddenly I saw it as redemptive. I saw that suffering could be a love-generating act, just like it was on the cross. And that was a profoundly life-changing moment for me. Yaya, she loves potty training. It's kind of a charism, really.
First thing in the morning, you put them on the pot. When they get up from the nap, you put them on the pot.
Well, how do you get them to stay on the pot? I mean,
She does.
Headed to Abby Johnson's house. She actually lives just a few miles away from me.
You know, I've never seen God in a real way, like in a visual way, but I feel like I have seen evil.
Dr. Calamarides, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you seeing me today. It just seems like I can't get enough sleep. I wake up in the morning and I'm just still tired, and the other day I had a second cup of coffee, which is nothing for me, and I felt like I was going to throw up.
What would you describe that you've been feeling? Have you had any fatigue?
Yes, lots of fatigue. So, we're pregnant.